This episode of our LBQ parenting series is extra special, as we get to hear two sides of the story. I'm Hazel Olson-Dorf, Outright's Comms content creator, a non-binary advocate who was raised by two activist moms. I'm interviewing Andre Rivas, a lesbian, non-binary parent, prominent Argentinian activist, and member of the LBQ Connect Sounding Board. In this episode, we exchange stories and perspectives, looking back into our past and forward into the future. Listen to the full episode.
My father has a magazines that talked about politics, and he passed away when I was 5 years old. And we had that magazines as a memory of my father. And my mother tried to hold to that magazines as much as possible. And I remember the day when we set that magazines on fire in our house because they were like dangerous, because they were political magazines. And my mother decided to do that because they were searching a lot in our neighborhood for people. So I think that she was afraid that if they find that, she was perhaps the one that could be in danger of being taken away and disappear or being tortured in that. Then democracy came, and it was like something incredible, and it was a journey to understand how to speak your mind, because all this oppression was there even in democracy. And I think that my first year or second year in democracy, I came out as a lesbian with at school. And the girl was so afraid that she told her father. And her father then called my home, and he asked to speak with me. And I think that, I don't remember exactly how old I was. I think that maybe 13. Something like that. He said horrible things to me, and I was so afraid because I didn't have the possibility to turn for help at my school, to say something at my home, because all this oppression was still there, coming from the dictatorships. And I think that was the thing that was great for us, for our generation, is that we reclaim the memory, the justice, and the truth of what happened to the people that was taken away and disappeared from Argentina. The LGBTI movement, it was involved in all that. And I think that if we didn't have the opportunity to be in that transformation and that political involvement, we couldn't achieve all the great wins that we had, like the gender legal recognition, same-sex marriage, and a lot of great laws that we have right now.
Wow, that is an incredibly powerful story, and of your mom and your father and coming out. How do you think all of that has informed the way that you raise your kid?
I think that for me, the most important thing is that my kid has information, because I grew up without information, and also the possibility to be political if he wants to have choices, because I was raised without the possibility of choose or have information and experience the fear of speaking your mind or being yourself in a dangerous position, because it was really a risk. So I think that being yourself and have the possibility to choose whatever is your identity, whatever you want to become in your life, it is a powerful thing to be really a person that can be at its full potential. When I became pregnant, I decided my non-negotiables. And one of my non-negotiables was that I need to be visible everywhere and in all the spaces with my son, because he needs that visibility. Because before I became a parent, I was managing my visibility. And I think that being visible is very important if you decide to have a kid, because it's like step one. You need to be visible in every single place. And maybe that is a hard thing to do in at your job, but I think that you need to manage that, because they need to have that clear information about you and the family that you are proudly building together. Because the second non-negotiable was that, especially being from a Latin American country, my kid is a person, a political subject. It's not a part of me. Since I was pregnant, I think that I have to keep that in mind. He's a subject. He has rights. He's not part of myself. He's not an object. He needs to have all the confidence and the information. And sometimes I think that our generations, especially the ones that we didn't have the opportunity to have information and the human right of the comprehensive sexual education, but because we were raised without that human right, I think that is the best gift you can give to your child, the comprehensive sexual education human right.
I think I was raised in a very similar way. When you were talking about like becoming visible in all elements of your life for your kid, it made me think about how my mom's raised me, and how shocked I was to learn that there were homophobes in the world because my parents were so visible and so proud to be parents and so proud to be queer parents, and we're just fully themselves in all elements. And so when I learned that there were people out there in the world who were against my family, against the way that my moms are and the way that they raised me, like, I was shocked. I must have been in like grade school. I must have been like first or second grade. I was at a school, and I was like 10. And this is sort of goes into this story about growing up in California and having this law that was up for vote about whether, same-sex marriage should be illegal in the state of California. And I remember my mom coming to school with dropping me off at school when I was 10 and bringing these signs that were like, vote no on Prop 8, and handing them out to people in the parking lot of my school, and having parents come up and be supportive, and then also having parents come up and be absolutely homophobic. And, you know, when you're a young kid and you're not raised as your own political subject, like you were saying with your second non-negotiable, and they just immediately say everything that their parents say. I was also confronted. My mom was confronted in the parking lot, but I was confronted in school from kids who had homophobic parents who would just repeat the homophobic language that they were taught and that they heard. And I would be like, I don't understand what you're saying. Your homophobic rhetoric doesn't make any sense to me. I'm like, how could you say that my parents are wrong? Why? You've never met them. I don't know what you're talking about. Like, totally not understanding. Because I was raised with so much love and so much support. And when you feel that as a kid, you know, you're like, what's wrong with that? I don't see a problem here.
I think that Fran has experienced that too, because he's like, he got bullied because not being a trans boy in Argentina, but because being a trans masculinity that is not stereotyped as masculinity, as he was and still is, because identity is dynamic, really. He is still finding his way of being a trans boy. And sometimes it's so amazing when he start doing things that it could be labeled as feminine, and he's so sure about his identity. And I am shocked because I said to him, are you sure? It's like, and yes, what is wrong about this? Like, come on, Mom.
like pushing your understanding of what yeah. I love that.
Okay. If you are sure, if you are comfortable at school with that, yeah. And he, no worries. No, it's your choice.
Yeah.
But and the amazing thing that is happening is that LGBTI kids, the new generations, the younger, I'm talking that my son, my trans son, has 10 years. So yeah, so they are taking their own identities in all of their lives, and he encountered that problem of having homophobic kids when he was out as gay, a trans gay kid, and it happened in a comprehensive sexual education class, because the teachers were talking about consent.
Love that. I love that consent is, yes, exactly, as it should be.
Yes, but they didn't realize that it could be with queer people too, queer kids too. So right. They say to the kids, if you like each other, or if you are interested in a girl or a boy, you can approach with care and ask them if they like each other, if they like you, if they say no, you need to respect that. So he said, okay, I like this boy and I am going to approach this boy, and he did that, and the boy was overwhelmed, and the teachers didn't imagine that, so they didn't really handle that situation really well, because I think that when you are teaching comprehensive sexual education, you need to understand that there's queer kids there, and they need the support of their teacher, their communities, because Fran has the benefit of having queer moms, lesbian parenting, but not all the kids can go to their families and talk to these issues and ask open questions. So that is why school and other places are so important, and we need our allies there and to be prepared to talk about this, because I told you before that I came out when I was 13 and I couldn't reach out. And what is very frustrating for me is that cannot happen in democracy.
Yeah, it shouldn't happen in democracy that we're so isolated and without so much information that we can't find community. We can't, share our truths. Yeah, I totally agree. I think let's talk about the question that you had for me. You wanted to know if growing up in a diverse family has changed my worldview.
Yes, I would love to hear that.
Yeah, I think that as a queer kid of queer parents, my world has expanded and has always been expanded, right? Like, I grew up knowing that there was more than one standard way of being a human, of identifying both in my sexual orientation and my gender identity. I grew up around a lot of lesbians and a lot of sort of gender queer people who didn't fall into a quote unquote normal box. And because of that, I feel like, first of all, my life is a lot better, in my opinion. You can quote me on that. And also, like, my way of viewing the world is different, right? Like, I think that there's sometimes for queer people, I find that there's like an outsider sort of like lens to the world, because we're having to constantly remind our societies, our governments, etc., that we exist and that we deserve the same rights, and that is something that, we're like, we're here, we're queer, please, like, hello. And so having to do that over and over again in regards to your identity, I think has really helped me see, like, there's more than just one answer. There's more than just one question to be asked, like, at all times, right? Like, I'm queer and I grew up in a queer family, and so I know that there's always another side, right? There's always another question to be asked. There's always another perspective, and we need to be incorporating all of those questions and all of those perspectives as we move forward in our lives and in our societies.
That is so great to know, because I think that I have another question for you. For example, when I was planning to become a parent, one of my fears, or I don't know, yes, fears, you can say that, was what could be the experience of a child growing up without the father figure. When I overcome that fear, and I am seeing Fran that he's like not dealing with that. How was your experience with that?
Right. I think that this is a common question that people ask, especially with lesbian moms. And I think that the same question is asked for, gay parents as well. Like, what about the mom? Like, and I think for me, at least speaking from my personal experience, like, I just never thought about it, right? Like, father figure, great. Other people can have that, and I don't have to have that. So many people who aren't queer, who aren't raising kids in queer families, also don't have, possibly a parent, one of the parents in the picture or whatever, So I think that's also allowed me to see that families, don't have to just be like, the legal family unit, right? Like my family is also my community, right? Like my sperm donor is in my life and is not my father, but he's in my family, right? And like so are like the fantastic adults who were in my life when I was really young. They are also in my family, right? Like it's larger, and that has allowed me to see and be loved by more people. I mean, and who doesn't want that? I mean, it takes a village, literally, and why can't we acknowledge the village?
No, I was wondering because I also the greatest thing to become a lesbian parent and to have a, a kid raised in that environment, so that the queer environment, is that I also learned a lot from my son, which was mind shifting in my cultural way of thinking and approaching the world, because I come from a Latin American culture where you're supposed to be like always leading and always like if you're a mother or a parent, in a position of knowing it all. And it is okay to share with your son, or even have that communication, that connection. We have a great connection. And when you talked about the expansiveness of the queerness of a family, that is great, because I learned that from him. Really, he was the person that taught me that, and still teaching a lot of things that amplifies my activism, and also challenge my different approaches to the world, or to the biases that I realize that I have because of he's showing me that.
Yeah, totally. I mean, I think that that's the most beautiful thing that I've experienced.
Yes, I totally agree with that. And you know that it is something that challenged me, is that when I heard you say that, it reminds me what is happening right now back home. You know that in Argentina we are facing an ultra far right, and when my son and I are having these great opportunities of communication, because I think that is another important thing to build a great open communication in the family. And when he's so sure and so outspoken about his identity and his queerness in in every day of his life, and in every part of whatever he is doing, I want to address the issue of encountering the possibility of more backlash in the society. It is a challenge, because he's looking at me like, Mom, what's the problem, really? And I want to ask you, how do you think that I could approach that? Because it's an important question for me, because I don't want to pass any fears, because I grew up in a different context, in a different political context, and I didn't have the tools that now he has. With all this information, with all the laws that are there. And I don't know that if you know, but in Argentina we have great laws for kids. And the problem that kids are having is that the information about the important laws that they can get access to, that protects their rights, if they are having any kind of problem is it is not being passed that information from the teachers, the grown-up people, because I think that this is because we are from our generation that information was like danger for us in a way. So in the case of Fran and in my family, that information is key because of that same reason. The thing is, how can I challenge, or maybe not challenge, his position? What do you think that is the best way to approach a person that is so empowered?
I am not a parent, so I don't know if I can answer it from a parental standpoint, but I think, his way of being is an outcome of, partially the way that you've raised him to be aware of his rights and to be fully embodied in his identity, and that is allowed now, whereas under the dictatorship, you were saying that, you weren't allowed to express that in the same way. And, I think having to have conversations about, the opposition with kids once you've, allowed them to be raised in a place of love and acceptance, just saying, not everyone has that same information, right? Not everyone has the same love and acceptance in their homes. Not, some people's families are not the same in those ways. And I think being able to guide him through that with the lens of information is power. And I think that might be the only way through, right?
I think that sometimes we are so challenged by the younger generation, and that is great. Because when I remember when you were talking a WhatsApp conversation that Fran showed me when Milei won the election. And they were a bunch of kids of 10 years old discussing this. And one of the kids in the WhatsApp group said, "Yes, come on, Milei has won, yes." And a girl from that WhatsApp group said, "What are you cheering up for? Milei wants to close all the public schools in Argentina, the one that, for example, you are in, or are you a millionaire to go to a private school?" And my son entered that conversation to put that the queer part of it. And I was like shocked because all of our grown activists were like in silence and shocking, and because of the outcome of the election. And I said, no, we need to stand up very quickly, because if our kids are having this conversation, we need to respond quickly and faster and getting them into maybe the discussions and the way to bring them more closely together in our activism. Really, I think that we need to let you know that we are here not only as a parent, but also in any way possible that you need us. And please challenge us. We need to be challenged by you. Really, we need to.
Totally. Okay, so I guess the final question that I wanna ask you is, what is your favorite thing about your family?
That they really care for me as the way as I am. We have a lot of different identities in our family. My wife is an indigenous person from Argentina, and I'm from a very different background from Argentina. Argentina is a very diverse country, and also Fran is very different in his identity. My wife too, and all the differences that we have. I really cheer that, and they are so supportive when, for example, I am away, and they are always there. And he said to me when I was coming to New York, "Mom, I'm going to really miss you, but I know that you are doing something that is very important for all of us." And having that love and support, it is great. And the other thing that I love is that we are all very free, and we can say whatever we want in a very respectful way, and it's okay.
Yeah, that is such a skill and such a wonderful thing to have in queer family. Yeah, that's great. Well, thank you so much for being on our podcast.
Thank you for inviting me and having me here. And it was really nice to connect to each other. And I hope the audience also connect with what we talked, really.
Yeah, absolutely. It was so lovely to connect.